After I awoke into New Victoria on the other side of sleep, for the second time in my life, I confirmed everything I had only suspected from my first visit. Fear is the temperature at which dread solidifies, and conversely the point where stolid reality dissolves. A scream can become the glass of a window, frozen into place like a wicked memory, conducting blood-dimmed light through its invisible body. Sleep is a place where worlds spin atop the heads of pins, and oceans gather into nutshells. And New Victoria is only the most visible part of the nightmare that prowls the unclean depths of humanity's collective unconscious. The nightmare beneath nightmare was alive and surging with the unfettered imagination of wicked children, a primal grotesquerie that informed every feature and facet of every edifice. There, the Goblin Knight, a darker and more enduring incarnation than that of the waking world, lives without cycle, without light or limit. It provides the wakeless city with its skies, its oceans, and its shadows. I entered a dark and shimmering building composed entirely of a kind of blackest coal, seeking out a momentary refuge from the dizzying sights. The instant I set foot beyond the threshold, surging shadows conducted me down a narrow arterial corridor and into a colossal chamber. The room was filled with the tallest and most worm-eaten bookcases I'd ever seen, some of them even seeming to rise beyond the silhouettes that spread wide and empty across the ceiling. With a curiosity so strong I worried it would give off light or sound, I took up one of the tomes recessed into the rotting wood. It was a dream journal, as were all the books, I somehow knew. And in some of the most handsome penmanship I'd ever seen, it charted a young girl's nightly journeys into a very peculiar nightmare. She dreamed of a giant machine called the Spirit Grinder, a contraption that could distill, via a protracted and quite noisy process, the color of a person's soul. For reasons she could never deduce, she was obliged to remove the tied-up and squirming bodies of persons, always someone she knew or ended up knowing, that emerged from a long rusty chute, and pass them along the strange machine. Once the soul's color had been rendered, she would then use it to paint, wielding a small and delicate brush, the irises of the countless moist eyeballs that passed in front of her via a shabby conveyor belt. All of this took place in a crumbling barn residing somewhere in the middle of a vast and dark forest. I was about to withdraw another journal from the shelf when I heard footsteps. Beyond the fact that they came from somewhere below me, I was unable to discern their more specific trajectory, yet they clearly seemed to be drawing closer. I slipped through an open window that led back onto the street, and ascended a rickety expanse of stairs that wrapped around the outside of a gigantic apartment complex that seemed to be breathing. I opened the door at the top of the stairs and entered with little hesitation, as the darkness initially seemed quite welcoming. I found myself in a bedroom with a massive four-poster bed slightly visible behind a flowing drape of glossy webs. The footsteps were getting louder, now emanating from under the huge bed itself. Suddenly I remembered I needed to wake up. I was so immersed in the darkling beauty of the city, not to mention the memory-dimming fog of dream, that I forgot the danger I was in. Something was coming for me, to remove me and fill my sleeping body with living terror. I searched for a door out of the room but found nothing, including the door through which I had entered. I was trapped. The footsteps acquired company as they moved along. I could hear the dim hint of laughter just beneath them. Yet most important to me were the sounds I couldn't hear. The sweet laughter of my sisters and the terrible rage of my father. My family was gone. I was alone. The darkness surrounding me was no ally. It only intensified to contrast me against itself, forcing me to stand out as a target to whatever was ascending the stairs beneath the bed. However, I sensed weakness in the trailing shadows that limped along with the stronger packs of darkness, as they turned from my gaze in fright whenever I looked upon them. With supreme effort, I seized these stragglers with hooked thoughts and glaring eyes. I wrapped them tightly around my fists and poured them across my body until they soaked into my blood, conjuring depthless voids from what used to be my eyes. I ripped the alien silence from its hiding places, bending and breaking its body across my will. And when nothing of it remained save for its loyalty to me, I draped its carcass over myself, until I was every inch the nightmare that was coming for me. Wanting to deny my stalker the benefit of a dramatic entrance, I seized the ghastly bed and sent it crashing across the milling shadows that attempted to highlight me. Beneath the bed lay a trap door, leaking the cold air of death. Again, I would spare the nightmare creature none of its props and fetishes, so I tore the door from the floor and sent it to join the ruins of the demonic bed. The murk of cold and death rose from the gaping hole I had created, attempting to engulf me. Within moments, my killing thoughts crushed them of their ambitions, and their corpses joined the dead silence that dripped from my shadow-haunted body. I stood at the edge of the hole, smiling as I spoke into the darkness. Soon I will wear your flowing skin, my dreadful friend, and I will smile from the dark hollows that once held your face. The footsteps were close now. I could hear only silence where once there was laughter. Then a voice the size of the room exploded through the hole, sending me flying backwards into the crowds of hungry shadows.
Oh, what bravado! What teeth! What spirit! I shall fill you with visions so fat and foul you'll wing fire. But first, I think your soul will travel with me, under all the beds in the world, through every closet, and down where the whispers crawl upon you like spiders, where the darkness tastes you with 1,000 terrible tongues. I must get you to that place where it sleeps within sleep, that old dream eater, and plump in your fears for the eating.
When the thunderous words ceased, a great shape rose from the hole in the floor. The thing that appeared before me was outrageous with its darkly exaggerated proportions of a doll, like some toy left in the crib of an infant devil to keep it happy and contented. It smiled at me with so much sweetness, my mouth filled with the taste of sugar. Though difficult, I managed to suppress my inconvenient impulse to laugh. I think I will miss your whimsical smile the most, dear creature. I will think of it from time to time, long after you're dead. The distance between myself and the giant grinning demon doll began to shrink. But before we collided, the wall of darkness beside me exploded into shards of broken blackness. Something huge had broken into the room. It was my father, in all his living glory. Froth and fire dripped from the corners of his mouth as his eyes blazed with tangible fury. He gripped his titan axe tightly in his mammoth, bloodless hands. My terrifying elder intercepted the creature, throwing his massive shoulder into the chest of the charging toy from Hell's nursery. Though glorious, the intrusion incited within me no small amount of irritation, as this was the second time my father had come between me and a manifest nightmare. The creature was lifted from the floor and sent crashing into the darkness comprising the debris of its staged entrance. My sisters slunk into the room behind me, their curving knives up in front of their grinning mouths. I wouldn't have guessed their next move for the life of me. They gleefully punctuated the length of my body with their happy knives, cackling all the while as they stained themselves in the shadows that had become my blood. As I approached a waking state, still caught somewhere between dream and only slightly more stable reality, I heard the syrupy squeals of something inhuman, followed by the sounds of something wet falling down a long flight of stairs, perhaps falling in many small pieces. I sat up and looked around, finding myself lying upon a dust-covered bed within the glass penthouse. A cold breeze lifted the edges of the oversized sheet that had been draped over me. My family lay carelessly scattered next to the bed. The thought of someone else hefting them for purposes that left them dry and without living color stoked a rage almost beyond my control. I retrieved my family and sought out the man with the ridiculous hat and blue glowing eyes. He was easy enough to find. I could see through the glass of the walls in the distant room where he laid upon a strange demonic bed. It was slathered in black silks that flowed to the movements of the ever-present breeze. While he retained his hat, his otherworldly eyes were lightless and inactive, apparently sleeping beneath thin sheets of pale flesh. He appeared to be resting. But if I understood these creatures at all, the possessing entity was merely away somewhere else, tending to the wicked business of harrowing. I waited for the creature to revisit its vehicle of flesh and bone, hoping that my vengeance could touch it while it occupied the stolen body. More to the wicked and grinning point, I hoped my sister might be able to slice beyond sleep and bleed a nightmare. I waited with the patience of stone, until finally a glow began to seep from behind barriers of flesh and blood. I hunched down behind the bed, not wanting the eyes of the thing to gaze fully upon me, lest I return to the deeper nightmare that pulsed beneath the city. The creature began to stir, rising from the bed and into the air, borne aloft upon the strange winds that never left the creature's side. I followed the light of its eyes as they discolored the sheets of the bed where I had once rested, steeping in darkest dreams. I lunged. My arm surged beneath the creature's delicate neck, squeezing with the strength of a python. My sister slid into the nightmare's back, only whispering distance from its heart. In a sing-song voice of scarcely restrained laughter, my sister's words glided into the open air.
I wonder, what color will you turn my radiant teeth, my light-eyed friend, after I've chewed you down to the echoes of your last scream?
She could hold it in no longer, erupting into sweet, shrieking laughter. The creature writhed like a fish out of water. Its brilliant eyes turned from glassed-in darkness to a blazing sun of cold light. The world caught within the shine of its nightmare eyes became liquescent, allowing the boundaries between formerly solid objects to forget their place and wander in and out of each other, melting and coalescing into the quivering chimeras of altered states of being. I could still hear my sister's laughter, dimmed somewhat by the many intervening layers of bleeding tissue between us. Ever so slowly, she moved closer to a killing death, and from somewhere deep inside the dream, on the other side of the creature's flesh, I could detect the living nightmare frantically attempting to flee its sinking ship. It raced madly towards an exit, smashing through door after door, hoping to attain the freedom that lurked just beyond sleeping skin, lest its mansion of enslaved flesh become the tomb of its spirit. My sister corkscrewed in the bastion of the creature's heart, freeing the death that lived within, ultimately denying the miserable creature its much-sought freedom. Instantly, the thing's dreamlight became as confused as the matter it fell upon, becoming both illumination and sound, a glowing scream that shattered the brittle, transparent skin of the warped surroundings that had mutated beneath the gaze of its cold blue eyes. My father was absolutely right. These wakeless beings scream and die so incredibly well.